Okay, this is Jim Horn. We've got a great black and white photography show. I've got with me John Diephouse. He's a photographer. And John, correct me, I'm sure it's Lansing, Michigan, a great part
Yes,
of
it
the
is.
world. Our grandson is going to MSU, and he's in his first year there. So it's quite the experience being on such a large campus coming from a high school. But more importantly, I saw John's work on the black and white photography magazine. And as I do with a lot of photographers, I asked John to come on the show and show some of his photographs, talk about his photographs. As most of you know, I'm not a gear geek. I think the equipment that whatever you have, whether it's your iPhone or your fancy Sony A7 II CS or whatever the nomenclature is, I think that will take fine photographs and certainly some as good as you're going to see here from John. But more importantly, the equipment is only a small part of it, and you're going to see why. When you take a look at John's photographs, they're really great. He sent about 8 photographs. John, so I'm going to turn the ball a little bit over to you. How long you been doing this crazy photography stuff?
Oh goodness, I've actually been shooting pictures for uh, 40,
Oh wow,
40 plus years. Um,
yeah,
but seriously, probably about 25. Started out, just doing typical snapshots, and started to see that I came close to what I had envisioned, but not there. Uh, and it was really when I made the transition to digital uh, about, well, it's almost 20 years now. My goodness. Um, that I discovered that what I could do in the quote digital darkroom um, got me a lot closer to what I had envisioned when I took a picture. Uh, you know, Going back to the days of film, you take a picture and, unless you shoot a whole roll, uh, it might be days or weeks before you actually see the final product. Um, and often when I would get a picture back after having them developed, I would, I would have the cringe of, oh, I obviously I
I
moved.
missed it. I missed it.
Uh,
Did you
yes,
send your
exactly.
Did you do your own darkroom work, or did you?
No, I never
Okay,
did. I never got into real darkroom work.
okay,
Um, so when I started being able to do that kind of thing, adjusting light levels, cropping, um, adding some special effects, converting to black and white, uh, I got a lot closer uh, to what I was really hoping for.
yeah.
Uh, and since then, it's kind of evolved from uh, kind of playing around to kind of a hobby to a serious hobby. And now that I'm retired, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a obsession.
Well, obsession with photography is always good. There are a lot worse obsessions
Yep,
that you can possibly have. So for the uh, for the geeks that we have on equipment, what do you typically been shooting these days with? I mean, the camera body and the lenses can be any lens, doesn't
sure.
make any difference. I think they're probably more interested in the camera body you might possibly be using.
Yeah, I started out with Canon. I shot Canon for a very, very long time. Started with a digital Rebel, um, worked my way up, or kept upgrading to uh, uh, a 5D Mark II. And then 3 or 4 years ago, it was really time for an upgrade and really made a complete transition to mirrorless uh, and made a switch from Canon to Sony, um, starting with really kind of I essentially I started over because I had gotten kind of burned out on photography, um, and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do it anymore or how seriously. So I started with just a simple digital point and shoot, and of course, in very short order, discovered that I'm not going to be satisfied with anything less than a full frame sensor, and moved up to the Sony uh, 7R Mark III, and then bought an additional body, 7R Mark IV, and shoot probably most often with either 24 to 105, uh, 70 to 300, or 100 to 400. Um,
And
now, at the same,
as I think we go through your work regarding the lenses, your work is somewhat eclectic. It's not. We've got some different shots in here. It's not all landscape, and it's different, which makes it you're obviously thinking about different ways to photograph things rather than just you know run down to Yosemite and do Half Dome and then come back and
right.
all that crazy stuff. Why don't we begin to take a look at some of your images, John, and then we can talk about them. We can talk about what you saw here, and we've got about 8 images to go through, and I think that'll give you
Sure.
a real good handle on John's style. Okay, here we go. Okay, John, and for the listeners, what we have here, and we have these in Michigan. I'm assuming John took this in Michigan. This is a covered bridge, and it's in the winter time. Go ahead, John. When you saw this shot, I mean, and John's got detail in the snow. But what did you? I mean, what really grabbed you for this shot? What was the
Yep.
emotional impetus here?
Well, I have I've shot this covered bridge multiple times. In fact, I have tried to duplicate the same shot in all four seasons, and it takes on a very different persona. Um, in autumn, it's a very colorful scene, uh, and visiting it in the wintertime, it was fortunately I had the area entirely to myself, and it was absolutely still. Uh, and it was a kind of a heavy overcast day, um, which really muted any color that there really was, which made the a very logical conversion to black and white. Um, wintertime lends itself to black and white naturally anyway. And I think I shot probably 50 or 60 different takes of this scene, uh, some much closer up. And I really like the perspective of distance and primarily the reflection of the bridge in the very calm water of the river. Uh,
And
it,
I think for the listeners, the fact, and I think this is an important lesson what John is talking about. Number one, he took 50 or 60 shots. He didn't. This was not a
yes,
drive-by shooting.
no,
And the other thing is he's taken this in different times of the year, and consequently, he's gone back and I think a lot of photographers what they do is they take it once and they forget about it and they go on to the next shot. But you obviously just hung in there, right?
oh, I go back every 3 or 4 months with a change of seasons, just because I like the kind of the Americana feel of it. It really is. It's a historic covered bridge,
Could be a postcard.
uh, and it kind of feels that way. It's not all that far from where I live. It's in mid Michigan, um, and it's easy to get to, and uh, it's kind of a local landmark. So
Yeah. Let's take a look at the next one. Ah, a still life. Now, remember in my introduction, I said John's got an eclectic approach here to some of his photography. It's not necessarily all the same. So what we have is a flower in a looks like an ink bottle, an old ink bottle,
Yeah.
beautifully lit. God, you've got the reflection. I mean, you've got the light on the ink bottle or on the flower, and it's then it there's a shadow on the back, and it's beautifully done. Were you working on a series of these, John, or of still life, or you just happen to? Sometimes you can just bump into still lifes.
Yeah, what I have found is that I shoot still lifes um, about the same time every year, um, about mid January to mid March. I start getting bored. Very honestly, this was actually taken at my kitchen table, uh, um, and what I find myself doing. Uh, my wife understands this. My wife of 40 plus years gets
Hmm.
flowers on a very regular basis. Uh, she loves them. I love to have flowers in the house. She's come to realize that half of my reason for buying flowers for her is they're not actually for her. They're for me to take pictures of.
Ah, there you
Uh,
go.
and and I have shot a series using that little vase ink bottle, um, a very simple paper backdrop, and very simple lighting. This is not a complicated setup. This is not in a very elaborate studio. Um, we have three or four different vases that I've used. I have a series using a pair of kind of a blue globe shaped vase. This just lent itself. I think the flowers were getting old and were ready to be thrown out, and I said, "Well, let me just try sticking one in this little container and see what it looks like." Um, and again, it's a very simple composition. The lighting, as I said with the first image, I probably shot 40 or 50 of these uh, with straight on various degrees of close up, trying to eliminate the shadow behind. And then I realized as I was doing it that the shadow behind was actually
Yeah,
maybe the more
the
interesting feature of the image.
yeah, I think the shadow helps. But now we're on to the next image, which is a once. Uh, Now we get into what looks to be I'm gonna some kind of architectural feature. I almost said stairwell, but it is a stairwell. But for the
Actually,
listening audience, I mean, you've got the blacks and the whites in here, and the geometric shape here. Does this happen to be at your house? Did you run into this in a serendipity kind of way, or? Um,
this this is actually light falling through a skylight, uh,
okay.
taken in an environment that I have drawn inspiration from multiple times. We visit art museums regularly, and this is actually taken in the art museum in Flint, Michigan. Uh, I have taken scores and scores of images at that museum, and there's something about that environment that obviously moves me or connects with me. So I've had 7 or 8 images from there accepted into a variety of venues. This is probably the most widely exhibited photo, um, and I think there's something about being in an art related environment that you see things differently or you experience things differently. And this was light literally falling through a skylight down a hallway uh, that um, I just happened to be standing there waiting uh, for the other people that I was attending with. Uh, and again, it was kind of a gray, overcast day, so the light was very diffused, um, and the just simply the abstract nature of the shape, the form. Um, it was a wonderful kind of study of black to white and all the grays in between.
Yeah, that's what makes it a phenomenal photograph. Okay, so now we slip into another. Now this looks like it's a photograph. Did you set this up? This is a photograph, no photograph. Excuse me. It looks like a painting. Could be a painting of a gal, and then there is a mannequin that's standing next to her. It's a little bit of a different kind of photograph. Um, was this? Was this? I mean, how did you make the? Why did you make this? I mean, did this
What
was this serendipity too? Did this sort of just bump into this?
actually, yes. With the pandemic, we didn't get out much, and especially during cold months, uh, to exercise. We would go out and walk at the mall, uh, and as part of that, I started shooting pictures of mannequins because I'm fascinated by mannequins, in part because they're almost human, um, and yet not really. There are some mannequins that are very very lifelike, as I'll talk about in a few minutes, uh, and some increasingly the more modern mannequins are kind of soulless, personalityless pictures, or images. They don't have a face. They are kind of humanoid. Uh, what's worth touching on is, I talked earlier about the equipment that I use. Um, I don't always shoot with a high end camera. This was shot with my uh, iPhone 6E. Uh, as I was wandering through a store, I was this mannequin caught my eye, and especially the image behind her or
Yeah,
her.
the juxtaposition. That's what makes the image. And I think the point there is to the photographer. You don't always have to have your best equipment with you, as John is pointing out here. It's whatever you can take a photograph with, as long as you've got something to take a photograph with. Let's take a look at this car, John. It looks like obviously an older car. It's a very high contrast photograph. A lot of leading lines that take you away. But I have a feeling, John, this might have been one of those another. And I think this is important. You got to be looking for the photographs like John is looking for the photograph. He sees it and he shoots it. And not only does he shoot it once, he'll go back and shoot it a few more times. Where was this at, John? I mean, what caught your eye on this photograph?
What you just described is exactly how this image came about. This was shot in northern Michigan. I did a couple years ago. Uh, I worked on a personal project of shooting every county courthouse in Michigan, which really was just an excuse to go out on some road trips and uh,
Yeah.
kind of see the sights of towns that I probably wouldn't have visited otherwise. This was taken actually in Alpena, Michigan, a little town up in northeast corner of Michigan. Um, this is an old Hudson that was parked in front of an auto repair shop uh, that I just happened to drive by on my way to my motel. Uh, Early evening, uh, took pictures of it, and really wasn't moved by what I saw. I thought it was an intriguing old car, but the pictures I took in the evening were kind of flat, and they didn't uh, have a lot of vitality. So the next morning, early morning, I went back, um, and it was a very different scene. Uh, the the sky was just brightening up, so it was very high contrast. It was mid fall, so had been a very heavy dew, um, and I think was the dew that really kind of made the image,
Uh,
which is why
yeah,
I've titled it "Dew on the Hudson."
yeah,
Um,
I would agree with you. It's the dew, it's the high contrast. The lighting is unique, but you decided to go back, and I think that's what we're getting here with John's photography. You just don't. It's not about one off. The next photograph we have, which I love, it reminds me of if any of you have been on Mackinac Island. Uh, this is what this looks like to me in the wintertime, if you were there in the winter, if you could get there in the winter. So, John, this is once again, this is a little bit of a sepia tone. And for our listeners, it's snow on and I would encourage you to go to the YouTube site because these are beautiful photographs, but it's snow on the porch with some chairs, and it's just it's a in my opinion it's a very relaxing scene. Am I right that there's you saw the water? I mean, the lighting is phenomenal, John.
uh, this again was serendipity. Also taken in northern Michigan, it was actually in Petoskey. Um, we had gone up for a family gathering, uh, late fall, beautiful fall colors. Took some nice, northern Michigan fall color shots. Only to wake up the next morning, and we had gotten 3 or 4 inches of wet, heavy snow, and it had gone from bright sunshine to, again, very gray, overcast. And this was looking out on the deck, the Adirondack chairs sitting on the deck. Um, and I think I thought of the title of this, which is White on White, before I actually took the pictures. Um, it
And you added a little sepia tone to. I think it looks sepia,
I
but I,
yeah
I
I,
oh,
I tinted it just a little bit because without some color, it was again very flat.
yeah.
It didn't have quite the vitality. This has been this was actually the first photo that I had published in Black and White magazine, and at one point actually hung in the governor's mansion here in Lansing as part of a Michigan scenes uh, art exhibit.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, it's a beautiful photograph, and I could see why it was there. Now you've been out to the junkyard, and
Yeah.
what we junkyards are great for photographs. I can tell you that. And what we see here are a bunch of tailpipes. You would certainly call this an abstract, um, but it's the fact that we walk by a lot of this stuff, and I would encourage everybody, if you have a junkyard you can get into, or somebody will let you into it, or an old antique place, this this is what you can find. And were you roaming around the junkyard here, John, for this, or were you working on a project for that's related to that?
Actually, just kind of stumbled across this. This was actually taken just outside Taos, New Mexico, uh, in kind of a roadside. Um, uh, it wasn't really an art display. It was not exactly a junkyard. It was kind of artfully arranged junk.
Uh,
And if if I see something that's rusty, I love rusty things. And this is actually just the image is really only a small part. This was like a wall that was probably double the width, um, and
Yeah.
I was drawn to the
To,
abstract complexity of it.
right. I think, and anybody that knows Taos, New Mexico, it's sort of an artsy craft, no, craftsy. It's just an artsy place.
Yes, it is.
Um, and so, yeah, you know, that beautiful image. I have a feeling, John, I am looking at one of your mannequins. And I have to tell you, when I first saw this image, and now I'm looking at it harder. I didn't look at it really hard before. It is a mannequin, but it's so well done. It's got these classic. Yeah, it's, first of all, she's got her eyeglasses on for the audience, and the way it's lit, it looks like it's lit from the top down. Is that correct? Is
Yeah,
this it's a store window? Um,
yes, exactly. This is another uh, smartphone photo taken out walking at the mall. Uh,
wow.
and I went by this mannequin several times before I actually shot it. Um, and it's probably the most lifelike mannequin that I've ever encountered. Um, there there's one other kind of um stylistic thing that I did that is very subtle, but I like to touch on it. Um, the image is actually a mirror image. Uh,
Oh, okay.
I took half of the image and flip flopped it. It's an interesting thing to do uh, with a lot of images. Things like looking at a car head on. Sometimes you get a result that looks just slightly off, but you can't really tell how. Uh, this by flip flopping half of the image, it actually took care of some of the lighting issues, uh, and uh, actually covered up there. I think there was some really kind of obtrusive shadows. So by flip flopping it, it really actually gave the face more humanity and more life than frankly a lot of portraits that I've shot.
Yeah, the face is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it just sort of it just jumps out at you. Well, John, I certainly appreciate you taking the time. I always get a little bit concerned when I just send out an email to somebody and say, "Hey, come on the show." And of course, we've got other podcasts they could take a look at to make sure it's not some kind of hack job or whatever. But
Sure,
you have beautiful photographs, and I want to
thank
make
you.
sure that you send me your web page so people can take a look at more of your work. And I wish you a lot of success, John. I you got to, as photographers, we got to keep going, right? That's what we do. And
Yep,
I think your photography, I think what besides the beautiful images, and we talked about this while we were looking through them, you just keep coming back and coming back, and you pre-visualize that image, I think, as to what it might look like, in a, on a piece of photographic paper or in a slide presentation like that. And I think that's important. People just walk by so many things that they just don't pay attention. And you've obviously got your eyes open.
part of what I've really have learned, what photography has taught me, is to focus on seeing. Um, I think I probably look at things differently. I don't know if I look at them more accurately than other people, but I'm often drawn to lines, angles, shadows that I think most people probably wouldn't see, and that really just comes from spending a lot of time creating images, looking at images, processing images. Uh, there are a lot of photos that I've taken that I didn't really what I saw isn't what translated into a picture, and it's only when I start doing something with it, um, it often turns out very differently than what I had expected it to. Um, but I obviously captured something. I just don't always capture what I think I'm going to.
There you go. And I think that's the, you're taking something that's 3D, what we see, and you're converting it to 2D or just a flat image. And
Right.
sometimes that doesn't always work out. And then sometimes it just works out so well, like many of your photographs. Well, John, I appreciate you coming on the show. And
My pleasure.
yeah, and the listeners will have a chance to take a look at your work on YouTube, and they'll have a chance to listen to the audio. John, you have yourself a warmer spring and summer, and I hope you have a lot of good shooting. You take care of yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much.